superintendent here at this wonderful three parks that we have here in the island of St. Croix. I'm honored to have been designated at the post, even if it's a temporary thing. I'm enjoying it very much. You are very, very, very fortunate to have the resources that we have here in the island. I wanted to welcome you all to this park that's your park. And also I want to recognize and welcome our Congresswoman, Madam Stacy Plaskett, and also her staff who has helped us organize this meeting today. Before we begin taking your questions and comments, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the things that we've been working on here at the park. Many of these things are included in the agenda for the night, and I want to make sure that at least I gave you an update of the things we've been doing here at Christiansted and Salt River and Boca Island, and then obviously let the Congressman address you and go on with the meeting. So one of the things we wanted to talk about was concessions. I don't know if you know, but there are 4 prospectors right now on the street looking for proposals for the 4 smaller concession operations that we administer here in the park. Those 4 minor or smaller operations are out for bids. The last day for submitting your proposals will be the 28th of November. One of the bigger contracts is supposed to be out sometime in December. We're working on it right now. That's for one of the bigger operations that we have right now authorized at the park. If you want to get more information as to where to submit any proposals, if you were to be interested, please do so. Send an email to the address of chri_superintendent@nps.gov, so we can give you all the information related to where and how to submit those proposals, please. COAs or commercial use authorizations. The park has been working on a series of activities, identifying a series of activities that could be authorized basically at the parks, identifying them, and right now we're working on the compliance process, compliance with certain laws regarding the resources we manage, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, National Environmental Policy Act, etc., etc. What we want to do basically is get these activities through the compliance process, and then basically put them out to see who would be interested in offering these services at any of the 3 units. So the plan right now would be to begin in Christiansted, move on to Salt River, and after consulting and coordinating our regulations with the ones of the government region islands in Salt River, we will then move on to Boca Island, because Boca Island takes a little bit longer just because of the compliance requirements that we have in the island. But we're working on those things as we speak, and just because we're moving in that particular direction doesn't mean that we're kind of like concentrated on one and not doing the others. We're working the 3 parks parallel. It's just, it will take a little bit of time. But we're working on it, and we will get those activities hopefully out really soon. And more importantly, once those are out, if you see something, you think of an idea that the Park Service could be doing on your parks, please send us an email. We will for sure see it, consider it, and obviously go through the processes so we see basically that idea could be implemented at the park. It's very important. I was telling my leadership today that at this park we only have 1 park ranger interpreter, 1 for 3 units. We're working right now on changing that. The issue is that even if we were to have 3 more park guides or park rangers, that's for 3 units that are supposed to be open 7 days, all year round. How do you think that it's going to fly basically with the staff that I have here? So that means that we have to supplement basically our services, right? That's basically where I see the CUAs operating, supplementing the services that we cannot offer here at the park. Plus, you know, if there are appropriate uses that we could basically do at the park of something that could be fun, nice, etc., why not? That's what the parks are here for, you know? That's what the parks are here for. The Christiansted Wharf. We just got $4 million assigned to the wharf here in front of this building to begin working on its rehabilitation. Right now, that project started. We're actually on the compliance and planning process on that one. We are not yet on the design phase, but because we need obviously these documents to begin on that. But we want to, first of all, let you know that this is coming, number one. Number two, tell you that there will be public meetings regarding this project to gather not only your opinions and thoughts about the project, but also to try and do this project in the time that it will be the less affecting to either businesses or the community around here. It's pretty important to us that we don't cause any more disruption than what the project basically is going to entail. YCC, that's one of the programs that I am most enthusiastic about, basically because that's how we can get the next generation basically committed to their parks and also to do something good for the community. YCC is one of those programs that is an enormous opportunity for all of us. YCC is Young Conservation Cruise, I'm sorry.
What is it?
Young Conservation Cruise. This is basically I'm sorry, I'm talking MPS. If you don't understand anything, please raise your hand and stop me. YCC is one of those programs that we use not only for, obviously, have an opportunity for people on the Honeyas. That's all fine and dandy, but it's basically an opportunity for these kids to learn a trade, to learn about the parks that they're working on, and learn about their communities. To us, right now, that's one of the programs that we're going to be emphasizing strongly, but we know there is a gap between the experience that these kids actually enjoy in YCC and then being able to move them to a job in the federal government. So for doing that, we're looking at the possibilities of creating, well, we're not looking, we identify some funding through the park basically to create internships. So we can basically take decent kids or other interested kids and move them through the process of staying at the park, doing a job, a project, getting them involved to see if in the future, if we had the funding, basically we can move them into a park job. It's a way of us building capacity within the community and at the same time ensuring that we don't lose the skills that we already have at the park one way or the other. To us, YCC, it's one of the cornerstones of our capacity building in the futures. With that, I want to talk about a little bit about job opportunities here at the park. The park went through their budget process right now. For 2019, we've identified some positions that we will be recruiting. Our emphasis, according to the strategic plan for the Caribbean parks and to us, is basically on trying to hire as more local candidates as we can. We are going to be working within the law, the parameters of the law, to make that a reality. Using either authorities that allow us to hire local or to identify the possibilities to basically get people to training programs so we can basically get them here. We need to build capacity. We are very, very aware of that. And we want to basically move towards that. I talked a little bit about the internships. They've been a great tool, specifically in our terror research program and monitoring program, which basically the model that we, in terms of how the intake gets done, we will be applying, but I think we could do more, and we will be doing more with the funds that we've identified. We want to make sure that these internships are tailored for cruisers, so we can basically get, again, as I said, more people from the island here at their park. Economic opportunities are also present. The park actually this year We'll be investing in the local economy, or try to invest in the local economy, about $500,000 from its recurring budget. The issue there is getting some of the local merchants to actually get them to register as a federal merchant. Because one of the things we encounter while we're doing or looking for contractors to provide our services or do a job or something like that, is we have some thresholds, and once we pass certain thresholds, the company that we'll be dealing with basically needs to be registered as a merchant, in the Federal Register of Merchants in order for us to award a contract. And believe me, it's a challenge to us, because if not, everything that we are doing in terms of services and equipment in the home yards, we have to bring from somewhere else, and it's way more expensive. So to us, it's really important that we start moving towards self-sufficiency in terms of that here in the island. The fee structure of the park. So I don't know if you all know, but the three parks that we manage, in Christian State, we charge a fee to go into our forts. The fort has a fee right now of $7 that started basically in fiscal year 17 in October. This is not a price that we at the park level dictate. This comes from basically our national offices in terms of the scale in which these things get applied, et cetera, et cetera. And what they're trying to do is standardize these prices across the board throughout the whole nation, throughout the United States and the territories. Right now, there is another tentative schedule hike to $10 for January. It's tentative, nothing set in stone, but it's on the schedule. I just want to let you all know that, because I don't want any surprises. However, I want you to be aware that that money that we charge on the fee stays at the park. We're what is called a 100% retaining fee. So we get to retain all the money that gets collected at the entrance, and then we reuse that money into the maintenance of our fortifications. Yes, ma'am.
Are you still offering these?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you talk about those?
Yes, ma'am. I was going to talk about those right now. So there's, just so you know, not everybody pays an entrance fee. Let's begin with that. Children under 15 and under are free. They don't pay anything. School groups are free. And then if you are a senior citizen, if you don't have senior citizen, by that is 62 years or older, you can buy the senior pass. Now there is an annual pass that costs $20. If you don't have that, if you want the senior pass, that's the lifetime pass is about $80. There is an annual pass for the general public, about $80 too. And then if you are a person that has a disability, you can also request what is called an access pass. The access pass is for free. Now, the good thing about all these passes is, once you have it, if it's a yearly pass, throughout the whole year, you can use it anywhere that there is an entrance fee in the in federal lands. So that means Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, National Park Service, everywhere that there's a federal land here or in the United States, as long as they charge you a fee, you can use that to get into whatever you like. And it's a senior lifetime pass. Once you pay it, that's it. So you're good forever. You're good to go into any park. Other than being an American citizen, which is a requirement of the fee program, you do need to show sometimes proof of, either your age or your disability, et cetera, but that is something that you address when you get to the fee register. The Slave Wreck Project, of all my experiences here at the park, other than turtle washing, this is the one that really has touched me very deeply in terms of my connection with this resource. This is a work project, let me start by that, that our resources staff has worked on for years. This is our third year here, but it will keep going. And it's basically documenting the sites where the ships that were containing enslaved Africans, basically where locating these shipwrecks, right? The peculiarity here in Christian State is that because of the relationship we have with our Southeast Archaeological Center in Florida, we started actually moving that program not only in the lands in the water, but also here in the land. So we're actually, this year we work right here in front of this building and in that glacis area of the fort. Next year we are still documenting that. There's already a trove of things that we have found that we will basically be doing some community engagement to see how the stories get told from the point of view of obviously the Cruzan population, and obviously about the experience of the descendants of the enslaved. This is in tandem basically with other projects that have gone through the island. There's one in particular that I really like, that Wind Plantation is they have basically the database where they have located all the descendants of the local Cruzans, which to me it's mind-boggling. I'm a historian by training, so you know the value of what this means in terms of research is immense. So anyways, lastly, visitor services at the park, as I was telling you all, we only have one interpreter. We're moving towards recruiting more people to basically get more staff working in offering visitor services and educational programs. It's important because we really want to be able to convey to everybody visiting the importance of these wonderful sites to the world, basically. These are world-class resources. There's no other way of putting it. And then these will also be expanded with collaborations with external organizations and individuals. For example, we've been talking to Mr. Julio Encarnacion, who works at the governor's office for the, as a conservator for the government. There's exhibits and things that we've been planning with him about the trove of information and documents and objects that he has found, basically documenting the local Virgin Islands history, that we would think that the fort or any of the sites that we have for exhibit will be a great place to have those and basically tell that story, which is important. And yesterday, we got confirmation from the Department of Education that our Junior Ranger booklets, which is a great program for kids, if you haven't done any of those, you can do them. That is really one of my favorite things, especially when the kids are doing it, they get sworn in. Normally my job is in San Juan. That is a very popular program. We swear them in, we take a microphone like this over at the forts, we announce them. It's such a wonderful experience, and the kids learn a lot. We have 3 booklets that we develop, and then another extra 3 for each of the parks, and then an extra one about St. Croix, because we want to be able to tell the story of the cult and the culture of this wonderful island. For each of them, you will get a different badge, so you want to collect them all, you have to do the program now. These programs will be done not only by our staff on the schools. It's not something that you will do only here. You have to do something at the school and then come back here to give continuation to it. It's going to be provided not only by our staff, but also by our very committed group of volunteers that have been through us after the hurricanes and the Homeland Yards, and are waiting on us to basically do something with Riverside River. But in the meantime, they're really excited about the prospects of doing this Junior Ranger program, because I think it's one of the most wonderful things that you could do as a park ranger, or even as a volunteer. With that said, I'm not gonna stop for questions now because I want to introduce the Madam Congresswoman, and then we will be able to address all the questions that you may have, okay? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. I would say, please don't leave, because what I was wanting to discuss, if you bring that, because it was really basically what I had primarily were questions about the things that you brought up. And I was hoping that you and I could have a dialogue with the people here in the audience. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I know there's a lot of things that you could be doing with your evening, but your attention and your concern for the national park and our relationship with the park is really important. I want to thank you for coming to St. Croix.
Oh, no.
I hope that you are enjoying yourself and you're receiving a good Cruisian welcome. You know, we can be a little rough, but we love our islands and the people who want to be a part of us. And so we're grateful that we believe that we're developing a relationship that's growing all the time with the parks, and that the park is always adapting to the needs of the people of the island. When you talked about the concessions, and I guess we'll start from the top, I was hoping that you could give a little more detail about what you mean. You said there are going to be 4 concessions. Do you know specifically what those 4 are?
Yeah.
And are you able to share that with us? Because I'm not entirely clear. And then the difference between the concessions
Commercial use authority.
and the CUAs, which you also said
Yeah.
are going to be here.
Thank you, ma'am. So the park currently, at this time, has 7 concessionaires that are basically the people that are moving the visitors that are coming to St. Croix, and then basically transporting them to Oak Island Reef National Monument. So those 7 concessions are not a forever thing. It's a contract that the government subscribes basically with the operators of the boats. There are 2 types of things that the concessionaire can do. One is a required service, and another one is basically one that is proper. The concessionaire has to renew those contracts every 10 years, and then depending on the size of depending on the concession and when it was awarded, basically it's when we renew them. So every 10 years, basically we go through the process of putting back together the contract, and then, or I should say, preparing the prospectus, and then putting them out for bids, because as I said, this is not a forever thing. And then depending on what's coming back from the possible, the people that wanted, the contractors that would like to participate in that particular program, is basically where a board gets assembled. They evaluate those contracts, and then basically they get out. The park is not involved in the selection process at all. The only thing we do is basically put the thing out, and basically once that the prospectus is out, we have pretty much nothing else to do afterwards with the contractor, except when the concession is basically granted, but we have to do all sorts of other things. Right now we only have, Susan, is 6 concessionaires. 4 that are what we consider small concessionaires, and 2 that are considered big concessions, or I should say concession operations. They are, the number of concessionaires we don't determine either. It's based on offer and demand, or I should say demand and offer. In other words, the park magically doesn't think, oh, I want 6 concessionaires. No, if there is no, we do a market analysis, and if the market analysis determines that the market cannot support more than 6 concessionaires, then that's it. But having said that, there are other ways in which anybody can do business with the government, which is, as you yourself said, the commercial use authorizations.
Okay, but can I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
stop you for a second? When you said that we have 6,
Yes.
and I think you said we're going to 4?
No, I'm sorry.
So, of the 6,
No,
they're
there's,
not all at the 10-year mark.
No,
are they?
no. Thank you for the clarification. So there are 4 right now that are up for, that the prospectus are out, and we are waiting on the bids basically, or not we, but you know, the bids are in, get turned in, et cetera, et cetera. There is another concession operation that's up for bid, that should be up for bid at some point November, December. And then there is another concessionaire, but that one, still, I think that one gets renewed in 2022, to be specific. When that, I'm sorry, Susan Duke is our concessions manager here, and she knows the particular dates that I'm making reference to. But what I'm trying to say is there's 4 concession prospectus that are out that should be basically, once we receive the information of the concessionaires, a board will meet and make those selections. And then the bigger one, it will happen when the contract, the prospectus is out, and then basically those proposals get in, and then evaluation happens, and then once we have those, the contracts are granted. And then the other one will come up for bid in 3 years' time, approximately. So going back to the other ways of doing business with the government, if you want to still think that there's an idea for you to provide a commercial service that the park is not, that the park basically doesn't have, there is the opportunity of doing a commercial use authorization. A commercial use authorization is basically every year you will have to renew it. It's a permit basically, but we call it differently. And it's an authorization that the parks give a contractor basically to do a service at the park, at any of the parks. So think about tour guides. Let's say that somebody decides that they have a great program that they could be doing at the park, and that they would like to bring people in and charge for that service. So they could basically apply for a C commercial use authorization, and then basically we could say, that's a great idea. We have certain contracting things that we have to basically get in order, but basically we grant that authorization, and that person can come in every year, or every day, do their thing, and then at the end of the day, you know, everybody's happy because more people come in and more, yes ma'am.
And so that would, an example of that would be what you're talking about with not having enough interpreters or others for
Yes.
Salt River or
Or
for
here.
some of the other areas as well, in the times then that you don't have the specific staff to be able to.
Or even if we have the staff,
Right.
even if we were to have enough staff, if a person, a contractor basically decides that they have a service that they would like to offer the park, as long as that, assuming everything goes well in terms of the compliance and the whole 9 yards, that's a service that we could be providing at the park. In other park service units, for example, there are many areas in which they do what they call candlelight tours. They do them at night, there's not enough light, so you obviously literally go with a candlelight. And then basically you get the story, you get, it's literally an interpretive program that gets offered, but you're being charged by a contractor. Park service basically monitors those activities, can audit the programs, et cetera, but it's another commercial authority, another way of doing business at the park. And it's completely legal. It just requires basically that all the ducks are in a row in terms of the service that is that the contractor offers, and whether or not it complies with basically we don't have any issues related to compliance basically that we would have to address. But it's a good tool that we could be using basically, that I hope that we will be using in the next couple of months, specifically in Christensen and South River, which is faster because we need it. And then on Buck Island, it's not that we don't need it, it's just that it's going to take us longer to measure the impacts that these activities could have on the very, very, very sensitive resources we have there. But we're working already on, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but one of the things we haven't done in Buck Island in about 10 years is basically a study on the population of the local Crucian lizard. This is very critical because this is the only place in the island that in St. Croix where we have this population of very rare animals that our resources staff has worked tirelessly with our other federal, yes ma'am.
There's a woman who was just hired by the governor, who was the main person doing the research on that lizard, and she's gonna be working for our local government. Have you met her yet?
I think,
Her
is
name is
this,
Nicole.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And she helped us actually last week when we were doing the, no?
She wasn't able to join us.
Okay, but she was scheduled to help us with the tree planting that we were doing in Boca Island. So the idea being that with this analysis, we should not, it should not take like a huge amount of time, but it will be done this year with some of the concessions money actually. What we're trying to do is basically make sure that whenever we're authorizing something on the island, we can authorize something on the island. So we don't allow an activity and then all of a sudden something happens and then all of a sudden we have to tell our person with the authorization, you can do this anymore. That wouldn't be fair. And this is not something that I personally, no. That's a non-starter with me. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem, thank you. And then you also, so for those CUAs, will individuals also have to have, as you discussed for some of the other job contracting opportunities, to be within the Federal Register as well?
Well, it's a different kind of thing, because when a COA basically is a bona fide contractor that's gonna offer a service. But what I was referring to when I was asking for people to register as a merchant of the federal government is basically we, the government, need something. Because right now, that's one of our bigger issues. Basically, we don't have a big pool of local contractors here to do a very big array of things. One of them we also have here. But then there's a whole other things that we could be actually doing with other people in terms of the services that we could be providing or that we would require, if you will, that we don't, that there's not enough people on the register that is local. So therefore, when we do put contracts out, sometimes we just have to give it to somebody else because we don't have enough people or contractors, if you will, from the local. And it could be anything from supplies to equipment to services themselves. And other times, it's basically we now, at least for supplies, we have a bigger threshold that we could basically be employed for supplies, but other than that, everything else remains the same. And if you want $5,000 worth of services, you have to contract it out. And then if you contract it out, our preference, because of shipping costs or any other thing, is basically we go local, but we don't have enough contractors. Yes, sir?
Does the park put out the listing, the local park put out the listing of those particular services that they may need
So we could certainly put something up in terms of like the things we're going to be requiring the next year or so at least. But that's actually a great idea. But think about this too. I'm talking about $500,000 that we have every year to basically invest in these things. But we also get project money. We also get non-recurring money that normally is services, is equipment, is all this stuff. And well, we could leave that money here if we had a pool of contractors basically that could offer those services or supplies, etc., etc. And it would behoove us basically to, as Susan was telling me today, actually, it's sometimes a very difficult process, but the Small Business Administration can help anybody that's interested in basically getting this information on, to basically go and register and tell you exactly what you would need. I will seriously, if you're considering doing business with the government, please, we need it. Because we need to, seriously, the cost of shipping alone to St. Croix is killing us in some of these things. Sometimes we buy stuff and it's actually more expensive for shipping than the actual product that we're buying. So that tells you basically what we're going, well, what you all been experiencing in your daily lives. So,
But it would be great to know what the needs are,
Yeah.
so that people who potentially could fulfill it would know what that is.
certainly, and we could identify those relatively easy.
Yes, sir. One other question. Would it be problematic to your department if there's a particular contractor that is willing to supply more than one of these services or several of these services?
It's not problematic, but it would be, the issue would be with that is basically normally, depending on the contracting process, it could be seen as, you know, we have to be very careful as to what is it. If we always get the same contractor, we could get questions. At least for us, it's a big issue, because we could get serious questions about how are we evaluating these contracts, et cetera, et cetera. One way that I am dealing with that is basically by our structure within the Caribbean Parks has what is called a project review board, and that basically it's reviewing basically the process that we're employing when we're doing stuff. So we are not obviating processes that the law requires. So one of the things we are discussing among the 3 superintendents that are working on this board is basically to have that board review those contracts so it can remove the bias from the local superintendent. It's not that the local superintendent won't participate or the facility manager because they have to explain stuff, et cetera, but it'll help us actually. If somebody questions why you're always hiring the same person, we could say, we went through the process on the hiring board, they went through all the candidates, and the local one is basically the one that gave us the better service. To answer you, it could be multiple things, and the other thing is, sometimes it also facilitates basically the contracting process depending on the type of contract, but you know, that's another $20. So, yeah.
And can you talk a little bit more when you talked about the Christiansted Wharf, that you
Yeah.
secured the funding for the reconstruction and the repairs to the wharf? Can you give us when you believe that construction will occur? Because I guess immediately the concern would be that we would not want the construction to occur during the height of our season, from November to April. And then if you're able to give us a time frame when it begins, do you have an estimate of how long it would take for completion?
Damn, help me out here.
So October 2019?
So let me give you this, because of the people also on, thank you.
Yeah, so she has questions, you can answer them.
Good evening, I'm Dan Vetter, I'm the facility chief here at Christiansted National Historic Site. To answer your question directly, the wharf project is tentatively slated for construction to kick off October 2019, October 2019. It's anticipated to take about 1 year for demolition and reconstruction. Again, the contract has been awarded to the company that will be performing it, but as the analysis and evaluations come back, that could dictate whether start times and stop times alter.
So a year from now it would begin, and the construction will take, estimate, a year.
That's correct.
Okay.
Who are the contractors?
And who are the contractors? I'm just repeating for,
HDR Services is the name of the corporation that's out of Denver. That's about all I know at this time. I don't know if they're subbing out any of the other work.
One important thing that I want to make clear about that particular project is that right now we don't have a design. And I want to make that clear because right now what we were doing is basically studies to determine if there were resources, important cultural and natural resources in the area where the project will take place, and then a structural analysis of the wharf to make sure that when we're constructing, we basically are constructing safely. We don't encounter more problems. And then that's basically out of the way. Now we're basically moving towards the compliance phase, which would require a lot of public consultation. That's basically what we're talking about, schedules and the Homeland Yards. It's important that you guys, if you are going to be somewhat affected, or you think you might be affected, or there might be an effect on your operations, if you are any of the businesses or persons that I believe or have anything to do with their work in that area, participation is crucial for us to be able to get a good project done that has the less effects on Christians, on the community. I encourage you all to participate directly. Don't delegate on anybody or think that somebody's going to take your point across. All right, it's important that you participate. There will be multiple public meetings related to that project. There's one, I think, in November already that we are that we're going to basically be announcing everywhere. November 9 or 10, I don't remember right now, but we'll get to the information. Is I guess my point. But participate, please participate. It's crucial that we hear from you because again, my experience is we government people tend to think that we know everything, and sometimes the most obvious things are the ones that we tend to ignore. So please participate and let us know all your concerns and preoccupations so we can take them into consideration when we're not only planning the project and designing the project, but also scheduling the project. Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question on, I mean, was that a project that was put out for bid, and was there no one applied to it?
So the project,
Locally, I mean?
Can you repeat the question?
so what she asked is basically if the project was out for bid, and if it was for bid, if there was no local corporation, I'm assuming that could get into that. So that particular project, ma'am, that money is a schedule for that project, but gets administered by what is called an IDIQ contractor from our national office in Washington. This case Denver. And we normally, we can fight about the contractor, but we don't get to determine who the contractor is. Those are contracts that normally get done by a certain number of companies that our office in Washington already has on schedule. We don't get to participate in that process as much as we would like. Sometimes we end up doing more, I don't want to get there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so there'll be opportunities for the local community
Yes,
to be
ma'am, for
engaged.
sure.
And one of the things that I noted is that often the national parks will put things on their website, and they're, advertising it within their sphere, but because of federal rules, they may not be able to necessarily advertise in local papers. And so what I've asked is that our office be informed so that we can then use the resources that we have to be able to get that information out to the community so that there's a larger dissemination of that so that people are aware.
If I may abuse your generosity for our announcements for
Right.
vacancies at the park, we would really appreciate if you could help us through that.
In particular,
Yeah.
so just so everyone understands the functions of my office, we have under federal regulations what they call a blackout period. So a certain number of days before an election, I'm not allowed to use our own funds to advertise things in newspapers. But after that blackout period, so for us right now, after November 6th, I'll be able once again, excuse me, to use the funds that I have within my official office to push out information once it goes through a vetting process. So when they're, and particularly for job announcements. So I know we're enjoying the time that we have with you, but you're really just an acting superintendent. And then within 6 months, there will probably be an announcement for a permanent superintendent. So for that position, as well as for positions like interpreters and other things that open up, I've asked that the park really give us lead time when those are going to be announced, so that individuals, a wider array of individuals can apply for them. And we locally can feel like we have the opportunity to put our name in.
Yes, seriously, I don't know, that's a whole other conversation, but I really wanna make sure that, we get the news for everything that we're trying to do at the park, basically spread out. I know that one of the issues that we had, has been that of communication. And I want to make sure that we are doing the utmost effort in communicating all the opportunities that we might have here, be that contracting opportunities or job opportunities or volunteering opportunities, whatever, internship opportunities, whatever it is that we're able to disseminate as much as possible, so we can get a diverse pool of candidates and then be able to make good selections for the different positions.
And you know, that's also a challenge for us, particularly in this park, as opposed to maybe the park, in the Virgin Islands National Park on St. John, because within the enabling legislation that created that park, there's language that gives preference to local hires, but that's not the case here. So it's really important on St. Croix that we make the effort to try and get this information out so that individuals who are qualified, veterans, etc., are able to apply for the positions. Yes.
As to the last part that you said, they're looking jobs and opportunities to locals. Is there anything that your office is doing to maybe have those same process in place here in St. Croix?
You asked if the same process could be put in place in St. Croix. That would take an act of Congress to ensure, well, you know, bills don't pass because you like the bill. You have to, it goes through a pretty long process to be able to be passed. So it is language that I thought about, and I've talked with individuals within the Park Service about doing that. But I think there are opportunities for us to, through the process that's in place already, if we have sufficient lead time, to identify individuals who already meet the qualifications and don't need the preference to be able to get those positions. If we really are making an effort to ensure that. I wanted to ask if you could give and talk with us about the fee structure and changes. Is there a way for us to, as a community, organize to, before that increase is in place, to be able to have some kind of say? Is there a comment period? Is there a period when we can organize ourselves to be able to push back on that, to let the national parks know about potentially the demographics in terms of income levels that are here that may make that a hardship for local people to be able to meet that, as well as, you know, if tourists have the opportunity of sitting at a bar and buying a drink as opposed to paying $10 for a fort visit, they may not go into the fort, and we'd love them to have that opportunity. And those are the, is there a way for us to be able to organize concerns of our local citizenry in the community to be able to get that message back up?
Yeah, that's why I made it clear that it's a tentative schedule for getting the fee increase. The fee increase is not in place directly yet, and that is because, again, there has to be a comment period for that. Usually what the Park Service does is basically opens a period that goes for a full calendar year. So starting this January of 19, we should start opening that as a community. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but as a community, another good way of you is basically sending whatever comments you're making to the Park Service to your congresswoman, so she can communicate those directly to our offices, and then, you know, be able to affect the process of establishing the fees. I do want to make clear that the park literally has very little say as to when the fee schedule is implemented. This is a program that gets managed at the national level, and then we get direction for those particular things at our national levels. I think that on this particular schedule, as you were saying, ma'am, it's just the $10 fee, nothing else will go up, because this past occasion in which we raised fees, the senior pass went from being $10 forever and ever to $80. I mean, you can buy it 2020, 2020, and then they change it for a lifetime one. But still, it's a pretty steep increase in the price. We are aware of that. That's why one of the things oh my God, this is on record. Anyways, we are encouraging people to look for ways such as the school groups. The school groups are encouraged to participate in park programs. I know that sometimes at least the Department of Education should have a ratio of student and adult, and normally those adults are also getting for free. We don't charge a fee if they're accompanying the school groups. But I seriously want you to participate in that comment period. There's many ways in which you can comment. You can make comments on our official page, in which this will be posted at some point, which is Pepsi. And when we get to that point, we will give you that. Also, you can write emails to the CHRI_superintendent at mps.gov email. You can send letters to the park. You should send letters to the park or a message or whatever way of communicating with us. And then obviously communicate with your congressperson or congresswoman so she can basically also have an effect on when the schedule gets applied.
Thank you. And then you also talked two other things that I wanted to bring up, and then really opening it up if anyone else has questions. And Richard, if you've seen any questions that people who are on Facebook have, we can bring those up also. The first was when you talked about the youth programs.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the YCC program. I think it does the part on St. Croix has done a phenomenal job over the years of bringing young people here for the summer, and it's a summer program, right?
Right now.
For high school students
Yeah.
to be able to engage in the park. I always give the story, my second son is an architect today, and part of that was because of the program here on St. Croix that he was able to be a part of when he was really young in high school. You guys are just amazing at getting them really engaged. Also know that you've done things like within that time period, taking some of all of the students, many of whom have never been off of the island to Buck Island, and introducing them to having that experience as well, which is really outstanding. And I wanted to ask you to give us a time frame when you may be expanding the program to internships maybe during the year, and also do you have a partnership with the local schools to be a part of the Young Rangers program, the Young Park Rangers program?
So you mean the Junior Ranger program?
The Junior
Okay.
Ranger program.
All right, so let me start with the YCC, which I think is, as you yourself said, I think it's a phenomenal youth immersion program. So YCC, to start with the last question you made regarding that, we asked for more funding for this year. We already did that. We have a cap of $50,000 that we could basically ask for, that will enable us basically to, instead of the 6 kids that we had this past year, basically add 6 more, basically duplicate the intake. This program has been so successful that the legislator of the Virgin Islands sent us students from their program to work with our kids in the things we were doing. They participated on every single activity that our kids were supposed to be doing. In order for them, basically, they were treated as what they were in terms of us, YCC kids. As you were saying, it's not only a way for them to learn a trade, it's also a way for them to learn about their resources, their culture, their heritage. And we take that particular program very, very, very seriously at this park. This year, we did a wonderful expo on the kids' pitch that ended up with kids' pictures that are our leader from the park standpoint, great employee that we have called James Riddick, taught them how to do photograph. And the photographs that these kids did throughout the whole park were, I mean, we exhibited them in the last Jazz of the Force that they did, And oh my God, I cannot tell you how many people were like, are those for sales? And they're like, no, those are the kids. But it was a great, great opportunity for them, and it was such an empowering thing for them to see that they could do wonderful things. They were realizing that they had not only a good set of skills, manual stuff, which I'm saying it as if it were anything, I cannot do half of the things these kids went through the software. But more importantly, when they took a camera on their hands and they started seeing what they could do in that particular arena, I mean, that was so eye-opening for so many of them. Really great photographs. And then the skill set that they acquired, as I said, I mean, they're not working here with any resource. They're not doing any house that you could find anywhere else. They're working with historic resources. Repair is not the same as preservation. That's not the same thing. It's a whole different discipline. When they were doing forest restoration or cutting trees at any of our 2 other parks, they knew that we're doing these things under the guidance of our professional staff at resource management. In other words, they were learning that there were trees that they could touch, there were trees that they shouldn't. They were already looking at these things through the eyes of a professional that were giving them another set of skills. So when you're talking about where can we go from there, so this year we found about $50,000 extra that we have in the nation's account that we didn't touch that much, but that we decided to basically fund internships with that donation money. It's not earmarked for any other things. We could basically use it for things that the park wanted. And I think that particular endeavor of creating these internships or opportunities or supplementing already existing ones like our terror program would be a really good investment, not only what we can do for the kids, but also what we can do for the park in terms of retaining these kids. Another funding source that we usually use specifically with the terror program, but that we could use for something with other programs as well, is something called YPP, which is another youth program or funding source, I should say, that the Park Service has, that we will be more aggressive in terms of pursuing to provide more opportunities so we can basically keep these kids longer at the parks. Because as I said, we need to build our pool of future Park Service employees. And I'm going to say this with less humility than I should require, but we truly have the Park Service in our blood, the gray and green as we call it, and we usually view this as a very integral part of our lives as Park Service employees. We do. We care about these resources. Listen, I got 15 people working for me right now, or I should say working with me right now. These staff, 15 people, have done so many things throughout this mayhem that the hurricanes caused, and the changes of leadership, and the other stuff, etc., that I was telling them today. Listen, 15, but we do as much as probably as a park that has 60 people, because we had to do that by ourselves with really next to no assistance from anybody else. So we're really good in terms of what we do, but at the same time, these 15 are not going to be here forever. We had to start building leadership for the future, because the Park Service needs to prepare the future resource managers, the future administrative officers, the future superintendents. And usually, if we have the resources here, the commitment here, we will be able basically to get these resources preserved for posterity. So, as I said, both YCC and the internships, at least for this year, we will cover in terms of the request for funding and the money being there, at least for the internships. Right now, we are actually talking to a regional office about the funding for the YCC program, but the government is on a continuing resolution, at least for our programs in interior, so therefore we won't be able to get an idea of whether or not we will get the money until a budget actually is passed at some point in December for our agency.
And then my last question, please open it up, is with regard to structural damage and repairs. There's been discussion in the past about Buck Island and the bathroom and picnic tables and the facilities over there, as well as if you could explain what is going to be done with regard to the building and the structure that is out at Columbus Landing in that area, and how that's gonna be utilized, because I know that for a long time that was a great space for our children to have activities, and schools would come there with young people.
So thank you for those questions. Let me start with Buck Island. The bathrooms at Buck Island, we in this past year have been doing tremendous amount of work there to get them back to what they're supposed to be doing, to make them serviceable and nice for the visitors that are going over there. Right now, we entered those projects basically into our system to keep them on a cycle, on a maintenance cycle. So everything from the picnic tables that you were mentioning, to the bathrooms themselves, to pumping them out, et cetera, we will have the funding to do these things in the future years. In other words, that we don't get a repeat of the situation that we had a couple of years ago, or a year ago. Yes, a year ago. Because again, it's not our standard, it should not be our standard, and it should never happen again. The picnic tables, it's a thing that we're also exploring a little bit. The ones that we have right now it's not that they don't work, it's just that they require a lot more maintenance, and we're looking and exploring at ways in which we probably could change those to a more or less maintenance demanding kind of stuff. So it's more durable, but at the same time, it reduces the maintenance cost that we have to incur. We actually, through the concessions, through the funding source from the concessions, we did fund a position right now that's dedicated to Buck Island. It's basically so that person could basically go there, clean the bathrooms regularly, clean stuff regularly. It's not that other parts service people are not going to be doing it. It's just that at least we have an extra body to help us, at least when we have more visitation. So we can ensure that those get clean and are nice and are maintained as much as we can. The other portion of your question was with regard to Salt River. So in Salt River, there's two facilities there that we have right now. One of them, what we call the visitor contact station, was pretty much heavily damaged, destroyed by Hurricane Maria. We were looking at the possibility, or we requested funding for demolishing the building and then building a new space there that will, in that particular same spot, so we can have a more visitor-oriented facility than what it was before, which was basically a house that we were using as a visitor center. Right now, we are debating with our leadership, both at the regional level and at the Washington level, whether or not that's the more appropriate use of federal monies. We are looking at alternatives that may include repairing the building. It's not, these are the things we're discussing. We will be making a decision in the next few days. Actually, we have a visit from the manager of the funding sources related to hurricane at the regional level at some point in November, I think it is. And we'll be basically making a definitive decision regarding Salt River pretty soon, at least the visitor contact station. We also have another facility there that is called the Marine Research Coastal Marine. There you go, that same thing. And it's a facility that we are trying, it was designed, first of all, so it could be an outreach facility for educational programs, basically highlighting the marine life that we have actually here in St. Croix, specifically for Salt River, and also the cultural elements surrounding that particular outpost. So that facility is ready for use for the exception of one thing, access. And we are actually working with the government, or we are actually in the process of starting meetings with the government of Virgin Islands. My deputy, who is not here, Mr. Gregory Camacho, who used to be one of our district rangers here, a Cruzan, he actually is, he got called back at his part actually today, but he will be back soon. Hopefully, I want him back soon. because he will be starting these negotiations with the government, with the government directly, so we can get the government, the co-management agreement with the government of the Virgin Islands finally signed, so we can start doing things there, specifically addressing the issue of the roads.
Would this also include the area where the historic ballpark is for?
So I think that is,
No,
that
that's
is,
different?
that I think is part of the park, but it's not part of our land. It-
Right,
it
right, because I
belongs
know
to-
that you have an agreement with the local
Yes.
government.
Yes.
That one as well.
Yes, yes, yes. But it's not a piece of land in which we can do stuff because it's not ours.
Right.
So we're kind of restricted there unless the territorial government allow us to do things there.
So I guess we can open it up to questions now.
Yes.
We'll have questions.
Yeah, I'm just, on that question you're talking about, on the other side of, the bay, over on the Judas Fancy Peninsula, there's a lot of controversy over what National Park has been doing there, because that's where Bio Bay is. Are you familiar with the
Are
difference?
you talking about the proposal for building the Marine Research Center?
Which
Yes.
is on the Judas Fancy side,
Yes.
there's a Bio Bay right there where the organisms are unique to St. Croix.
Yeah.
So I think you're talking about the bio,
Luminescent.
bioluminescent,
So there's a lot of
right.
controversy about that, are you including input from the people?
So let me
Can
begin.
you bring the question back?
Oh,
up?
I'm sorry, yes. What the person was asking was about the bioluminescent bay over on South River Bay, National Historical Park, and basically whether or not we were gathering input from our communities regarding the development of that particular facility. First of all, we haven't built anything. We are actually, it's designed, it's there, but when we go to the part of implementing that particular project we will have we will seek input from everybody involved in the area. First of all, because it's not only our park, it's a co-managed park, and then obviously there are communities surrounding that particular park that may have something to say about the development of the building there. I do want to say something though. When we were designing this particular building, this was meant as a facility that is supposed to cause basically next to no impact to the local environment. And this is basically the design that we have. If there is a field for, not a field, actually I should say, if there is if there are questions regarding that particular issue, I think that on the process for public meetings, etc., they should be brought up there, so those issues can get addressed. Because I want to make clear that we, the Park Service, are not here. Hopefully, you understand that we're not here to damage anything that is under our purview. It's not what we do. That's not our business. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, hold on, so I'm gonna bring the mic to
With regards to the wharf project, do you know if concessionaires will be able to dock there and embark passengers when it's completed?
You mean on the wharf project, sir? I think that while we are doing the project particularly, we might not be able to. We might. Hello?
It's running out of battery.
Hello?
So you wanna just speak up? Can you speak loud enough, or try that one?
I'm sorry, so what I was saying is that while we're building, we might.
Okay, so I'm gonna speak loud. I can do that. So I guess that while the wharf is still rebuilt, I think that whole area is gonna be basically a construction area. So it might be impossible basically to get anybody to dock in that particular area.
After completion.
Oh no, but after the completion of it, that's the idea. The wharf is supposed to be what it was. In other words, even the configuration of the wharf, our compliance team, which is our resources team, is making sure that even the form of the wharf resembles the historical appearance of the wharf as it was. So we will maintain the wharf as an operational wharf, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what the plan is for the dock at Buck Island?
Yes.
Can you tell us?
So I want to say I don't know, but he does. Dan knows. Dan is our facility manager here at Christiansted, Buck Island, and South River.
So I think the question was for people that are tuning in was do we know, are there plans for the dock on Buck Island?
Yes, there is plans for that. Yes, there is hurricane funding that was input into the system when we wanted to procure money after those storms. That money is available. We are currently working on plans.
We are currently working on the planning phase of how we're going to implement that project. So yes, we do have the money for it to repair in kind. The wooden skirting is all that was ultimately damaged on it. The concrete structure part seems and sounds safe. So we are getting that funding. We do hope to implement that probably this fiscal year, 2019.
Yeah.
Can I ask about, I know that we've had in the past, just going back, a thought came to me. We used to have, a gift shop and stuff
In the park.
related to the fort.
Yes.
Is that going to continue?
Yes.
Is that a concession? How is that?
It is not a concession. It is, the Park Service operates, actually I should say, the Park Service has what is called a cooperative association called Eastern National. Eastern National operates throughout all the national parks, even Forest Service. Anyway, it's a non-profit outfit that operates, right now it's operating out of the Scout House, but we're gonna be moving that inside the fort, so we can basically get more people basically to buy the products that Eastern National offers. Eastern National is normally not it sells usually park specific items. It doesn't sell what you would call like the usual, if there's such a word, tourist things that you would see. Usually they are specifically park related stuff. They're more of an educational content than a commercial one, if you will. Obviously they want to generate money because that's how they sustain the store. And also we want them to generate money because some part of the winnings that thing makes comes back to the park, and we can use that money for interpretive programs and things related to visitor services. If it's not related to visitor services, it's very difficult for us to use the money that Eastern National generates. I want to make clear that is not a store in terms of the contractor or something like that. Eastern National is a cooperating association, it's a non-profit. Right now, because of the low levels of sales that is experiencing, Eastern National actually is open in a couple of days. By moving that operation to the fort, what we wanted is to keep it open. That store normally has at least one employee, a local cruiser. We wanted to have, obviously, be open 7 days, so that's another way in which we want to generate at least another person that could take care of the store while the fort is open, basically. Any other questions? Yes,
I
ma'am.
have, this is the real reason I came. The national park preserves native species. On St. Croix, we have an invasion of alien species. In particular, we right now have one called the red boa constrictor, a very large snake. The local Fish and Wildlife did not renew the grant for the removal of these snakes. Is there somewhere the national park could help out so that could be, there's a lot of people really afraid.
I seriously, what the person is asking is regarding an invasion of the
Red boa constrictor. It's a large
red boa constrictor. That's throughout
St. Croix.
the island of St. Croix. So normally our funding sources regarding to species control are basically for Park Service lands.
Okay.
Normally we don't do that. I can recall Clayton or Sandy. If you guys know better than me, please.
I think that the point that you made about Dr. Nicole Angeli
Yeah.
becoming the director of Fish and Wildlife Service is we will have a BOA control program.
Thank you.
And what I'm saying is this, it's not that we cannot do stuff within our lands, but it would be very difficult for us to do it outside of our boundaries.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, they still could get into your lands.
Yes, that's what I'm saying,
Migrating.
but, yeah.
Felix, I'll respond to the woman as the biologist here. I work exclusively with
Right.
Department of Planning and Natural
Sandy,
Resources.
could you come up here? So-
Sure.
Yeah.
We
Thank
can
you.
talk about invasive species, one of my favorites. Yeah, good evening, Zandi Hillistar, Chief of Resources, and in response to the most critical threat to our native flora and fauna from our non-native invasive species, and that's really key, that invasive. They will push out our native species, and that's happened a lot over historical time on St. Croix. But working with our territorial partners, working with our nonprofits, we have there's sort of a working nugget of people that Nicole, fortunately for us, Dr. Nicole Angeli has taken this position, and she'll continue that, everything from feral cats to the BOA, but to the point of the Park Service lands, we do not work in isolation. We work collaboratively and in partnership with Fish and Wildlife Service and DPNR on our lands. Also, we fortunately have a U.S. Department of Agriculture Wildlife Services representative, two folks, who actually work on the 3 islands, and their job is actually looking at these sort of feral animals. And so this group, we're talking all the time, which is really excellent. So we'll see where we'll go with the BOA. The loss of the grant doesn't mean it's gone forever, but that's something that Nicole, fortunately, will continue and will expand this partnership, which actually includes our veterinarians, looking at feral cats and looking at feral dogs, feral hogs. Actually, they're working on hogs right now. Well, no, chickens, they could belong to someone. That's what I've always told. But for the BOA, yes, it has moved. Will Coles has been really instrumental in this program. Will actually told me just a few weeks ago that he found one on the west side of Salt River. So we know they're close to the park, Felix, they're close to the park. This is a huge collaborative effort and an educational effort. So
Thank you.
we'll work towards that. And I think the territory just did a animal wildlife plan. So pretty exciting. Yep.
Thank you, Sandy.
So any more questions?
Yes.
Who wants to go first?
Right here in front.
I was able to read a study about commercial use authorizations in the U.S. The gist of the study was that in parks that are seeing a large increase in visitorship, the commercial use authorizations are allowing them to absorb that demand, which seems to make sense.
Yeah.
You're discussing applying them to a park that doesn't have that demand.
Right.
What's the rationale for adding the commercial use authorizations?
So in the particular perspective of this park, as I said, we only have one interpreter. There's no way that could be enough for the 3 units we manage. There is no way. Period. I mean, this is one person that's supposed to be doing outreach, that's supposed to be doing educational programs, and that's supposed to be doing tours. One of the reasons why people don't come into the park, what do you think it is? What services? What would be their incentive to come here? When they come here and all they see is basically an empty structure. There's nobody to tell them what the story is. There's nobody to tell them why it's significant. There's nobody to tell them why is it important to the community of Christiansted. So when you're asking me about the rationale behind this, it's basically we need it. There's no other way of putting it. We need it.
Right,
And I'm
But
talking
I-
about a particular service. What we're doing right now, and I wanna be clear about it, is, we are identifying things that could be done at the park. That doesn't mean that we're gonna start implementing everything, because as you yourself are saying, once we identify these activities, the other thing we have to do is basically, is there a demand for them? And if there is, then we could start basically authorizing these things out, so they can get done. But what I don't want is, to just basically, because it has been the way we've always operated, that we don't try anything else. It can be the way we're operating at this park. We're in the 21st century, my friend. It can be done.
so if I can ask a follow-up, understand the rationale for the Christiansted site. For Buck Island where you have operators,
Yeah.
where visitorship is down, for
Mhm.
instance, I mean, there used to be 36 operators at that park back in the 60s and early 70s.
Mhm.
And through market demand and hurricanes and the Sperber family buying up every contract as it became available, it's been consolidated down.
Mhm.
My business operated at less than 10% of its capacity. If there's a service that we're not offering, but at the same time, every service that we've asked to operate at the park over the last 30 years that has been denied, are you gonna review all of those services that we offered to the park that were not accepted?
So,
Or do we need to resubmit those?
I want to, do two things here. With regards to the concessions contracts, those are still up for grabs, right? Things that we, what I'm trying to say is this: just because you have a concessions contract doesn't mean that you cannot have a COA contract. Do you see what I mean? So if, for example, you're a concessionaire that wants to, let's say, for example, we were to authorize, guided tours specific for, say, we want to watch the flourishing grounds of the flower of Buck Island, and I'm making this up. There's no such thing that I know of. So say you wanna do that. You wanna basically see where this thing is and the Hona yards, and you wanna develop that tour. There's probably not a thing in your contract for a concession, if you were one, that says you can't do that, right? So you can come back to the park and say, hey, I wanna augment the amount of people I can get into the island by offering this service, okay? Now you're offering a thing that is not in your contract. We can go back and say, here's your COA for this year. Show me the numbers, show me that there's demand for it while you're doing this service, and then maybe at some point we can amend your contract and include it. Or we could say, keep it as a COA, it's more appropriate that way for you, and then basically add to that. You know what I mean? It's what I see in a way in Buck Island is, and again, I'm way ahead of the game because, as I said, in Buck Island, we have very specific conditions in the island that I don't want that to be a deterrence for what we could do there, but at the same time, I just don't want to affect the specific resources we have there. So in that fine balance, and assuming these activities were proper on the island, there's an opportunity there, even for a concessionaire to make more money by bringing more people because you're doing a specialized thing that, you know, not necessarily normally, and I'm assuming here, I don't know, but maybe the concessionaires, what they get is people who want to go to the island and have a nice day at the beach. That's what I'm assuming here. Not everybody's like that, but it could be. So say, for example, that you offer this particular tour, that you're doing this particular day, and you're offering this particular service, and that's the kind of public that you're getting for that particular time. That's a captive audience that only you are offering at that point. That's you creating a market that wasn't there before. And that's an opportunity that we could basically provide for the same concessionaire, or we could provide to somebody else that they could subcontract the concessionaire to bring the people over to the island. So again, these are things that could be done. We're still figuring out that part of the concessionaire subcontracted the homeowners, but I think it can be done. It doesn't hurt. But what I'm saying is, we're trying as much as we can here in the parks, on the 3 units, to create at least an opportunities for businesses that hopefully will bring something back to Christiansted. As I said, I'm a historian by training. I do historic preservation on my park, and I do it here. Well, I should say this is my park now, but you know what I'm trying to say, in my normal day job. And sometimes when I come down to the town and I see some of the buildings that are here and I see how beautiful they are, but the state in which they are, I get something in me that just wants to, do something about it. My way of doing that is trying to generate as much as I can in terms of the opportunities that we provide here at Christian State, Buck Island, and even South River. Because I think that's the key to generate a lot more visits, a lot more business, a lot more, basically, work for the local community as well as in the parks. That's why I'm trying to see what the impacts are. I'm trying to see what the opportunities might be, because I want for you who are community members to view this park as another opportunity. That's all. That opportunity could mean the difference between, as you're saying, a business failing or a business having another opportunity. And that to me is very serious.
So when you talk about opening up the CUAs or whatever and the concessions, for those individuals, it's our understanding that the people coming to Buck Island, there are less people, there are less tourists
Yes, ma'am.
who are coming there. And so if a concessionaire has that business right now, if you're expanding, are you going to be expanding the amount of people who can bring visitors there? And how will you determine if that's going to be the case, if we know that tourists, the numbers are going down, which may then impact the few individuals who have that business?
Right, so.
And are employing people.
So that's I guess going back to the original question that he was making, it's if the numbers are down for general visitorship in terms of what our concessionaires are basically